Hey guys, how are you? I thought I'd come and do you a video on some of my Scott Walker LPs. I'm not going to do singles, there's a few albums I've missed out as well, just for brevity's sake. I did a big video earlier, but I did it off my laptop and the sound scrambled. It was a 16-minute video, uploaded it, played it back, and the sound was awful, so I'm trying it on a Mac now a bit differently, so hopefully it'll work. Anyway, here we go. This is Take It Easy. Take It Easy with the Walker Brothers. That was their first album. Then we're going to Portrait. It was their second album. It's probably the better of the two. And the third album is called Images. I don't have that on vinyl yet. I'm still looking for a decent copy. But anyway, I should say the reason I'm doing this is because I've got some friends that are into Scott Walker, some that aren't, but I'm trying to get them into him. And since he's got a new album that came out on Monday, I thought I'd just show some records really. But he was a big he really got me into music. I suppose I was about 14 and I bought, where is it? I bought this CD, came out 2000. It's called Boy Child. It's the best of Scott's first 5 solo albums, and it was really strange hearing it. I mean, I was listening to like Nirvana and Oasis and Metallica at the time, and I heard this, and it's just something completely different, and it really inspired me to look at his music and to go and off on a tangent and look at other music that I wouldn't usually have even thought about listening to. But anyway, I'll crack on to his solo albums. These are all original presses. I'll show some of the new presses in a bit. This is Scott, otherwise known as Scott 1. So that was his first solo record. And most of his early solo, first 2 to 3 albums, he did a lot of cover versions with his own stuff as well, mainly Jacques Brel, who you might have heard of as well. Anyway, here's Scott 2. And 3. This is the gatefold. I'll just pull this out. This is probably my favourite. Yeah, it's a great album. So these first 3 were commercially successful. They all charted very highly in the album charts. So he had a few singles did okay off them as well. It was quite big for a couple of years, pretty big as a solo star. Then he brought this out, Scott 4. Now this was his first solo album with all his own material on, and it's probably musically the best of his solo albums. But inexplicably, it absolutely bombed. It hardly sold anything. The public just weren't interested for one reason or another, and so the record company pulled it only after a few months. And it's really hard to get a copy of now, so if you see a copy of that, reasonably priced, buy it. Okay, so now we go on to his later period, where saying if you record these albums of more commercial music that we can market better, then along the line you can start recording your own stuff again, like your Scott 4, you can start doing your own stuff. So he was just like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. So I'm not really too sure about this one. I've never played it. I've got the songs myself. It's Any Day Now. It's a Japanese pressing, and it's got the strip obviously, but I haven't got the heart to open it really. But then these are the kind of the 2, I suppose, people think famously bad ones, but they're listenable and they're quite good, but it is country and western, a lot of it, and pretty middle of the road. This is Stretch. Probably the worst cover of all time. This is We Had It All. And he also did an album called From the Movies, which is a bit earlier. I haven't got that. But Phillips, in their wisdom, realised that actually people kind of like the early stuff, so they released that as a best of. Then they released some of his later stuff, which didn't sell as well, obviously. And when the Walker Brothers got back together in the mid-70s, well, it was the late 70s, about 77 I think, they recorded Night Flights, which was a pretty famous album. It sold terribly, but it was famous because it's where Scott went into his next phase. He recorded 4 songs of stuff that he composed and wrote the lyrics to, and it was very heavily influenced by Bowie's Berlin period. Bowie was a massive fan, still is, of Scott Walker. If you watch the film 30th Century Man, I think it's on YouTube and Netflix, and the DVD is pretty cheap as well. That's really worth watching. It's a history of Scott Walker, and it also shows a lot of the studio footage of him recording his last album. But anyway, we'll get into his solo stuff. So this is Climate of Hunter, and this was released, it's either 83 or 84. It's released on Virgin Records, and it's a great album, very of its time, but just doesn't really sound like anything else that was going on around then. I think, yes, it was the worst, it still is the worst selling album ever on Virgin Records, but it doesn't deserve that, really. And you got to wait a long time then. I think this is 95, yeah. 95 Mercury Records release Tilt, which is an exceedingly strange album, but a very good album. It takes a lot of listening to this stuff. I mean, it's not your conventional drums, bass, guitars, keyboards. He's using like bricks and breeze blocks and animal carcasses to make music, which sounds really terrifying, but it is worth a listen. But this is probably the 2007 album, The Drift. This is where stuff gets really weird. I haven't opened this, or I'd drag the stuff out. It's a still sealed copy, an original press. It's quite hard to get. But yeah, it's a really strange album. If you've got Spotify or YouTube and you don't want to fork out for it, just have a listen to it. It's very weird. This is his new album, latest album that came out on Monday. This is Bish Bosh. So, and that's good, that's going back, it's more listenable than The Drift. It's going back to kind of Tilt, Climate of Hunter, that kind of stuff. If you do see this, it's double LP, and it comes with a CD as well, and the CD booklet, so it's a bit of a bargain, really. About £17–18, so maybe $25. It's a good album, but there are some reissues of his earlier albums out by 4 Member Beards. So this is the first one, Scott 1, and Scott 2, Scott 3, and the mighty Scott 4. So I really recommend, if you do see these, they were reissued a couple of years ago, but they're getting harder and harder to find now, especially Scott 3 and 4. So if you do see the reissues, reasonably priced, you will enjoy these albums if you give them a listen. Especially these first 4 are absolute classics, and I do think that, you know, in a few years to come he will become a lot bigger. People will look back to it and just say, you know, the guy was a genius. But these newer records, I'd concentrate maybe on Climate of Hunter, Tilt, and the newest one, Bish Bosh. The Drift is, you know, it's hard going. It's not a pleasurable or enjoyable listen, but it's definitely an experience. But if you don't really know much about Scott Walker, I do recommend this best of, Boy Child. You should be able to pick it up reasonably cheap. It's where I started, and it's a very good collection of his first 5 albums worth of work. On another thing as well, just book-wise, there is. This is an old biography, but it kind of does the job. A Deep Shade of Blue by Mike Watkinson and Pete Anderson. It does the job. It's mid-90s, I think. 94 it came out. Yeah, 94. It goes over his life, obviously, but it's as good as anything else out there. The best one, really, in terms of the music, is this one, Scott Walker, Rhymes of Goodbye. This goes through all of his work, all his songs, got a few pictures in there as well. And I really recommend this if you're going to have a listen, to have this as a kind of reference tool with it. It might help you make a bit more sense of some of the music. But I hope you've enjoyed that anyway, and I'll be back soon. Cheers, thanks.